Really? Eleanor and Ezra immediately snapped to attention, their eyes fixed on him, eagerly awaiting the next development. It's close, very close to success. Theodore closed his eyes, carefully sensing it. His emotions grew rather excited. Almost there, just a bit more, he mumbled to himself. Eleanor and Ezra were excited. Haha, it's happening. Suddenly, Theodore's eyes flew open. Just as he was about to share the good news, his body shuddered violently, as if struck by lightning. The next moment, he coughed up a mouthful of fresh blood. His entire body went limp, and he collapsed to the ground, unconscious. Ah! Seeing this scene, Eleanor and Ezra were utterly bewildered. Wide-eyed, they exchanged astonished glances. What just happened? Weren't they on the brink of success? Why was Theodore suddenly vomiting blood? Sir Crane, Ezra shouted. His voice was filled with urgency as he rushed to Theodore's side. But as they gathered around Theodore, they witnessed an alarming transformation. His body convulsed uncontrollably, blood streaming from his nose, and a look of terror in his eyes. What's happening to Sir Crane? Could he be possessed? Eleanor's eyes widened with shock. Theodore's condition had changed abruptly. He was fine before, but now, he was convulsing strangely. It was utterly perplexing. Quick, to the hospital. Panic swelled in Ezra's voice as he gave orders to his assistants. They carefully carried the stricken Theodore out and rushed him to South City Hospital. After all, Theodore wasn't any ordinary person. He hailed from the enigmatic Mystic Arts Order. So, his untimely demise within the Swanson family's estate could bring them huge trouble. The night deepened as they arrived at South City Hospital. The doctors fought to stabilize Theodore in the ward. Ezra paced back and forth in the room, his unease palpable. Meanwhile, Eleanor appeared relaxed. She calmly peeled and ate a banana, appearing as though she had no care in the world. She seemed more concerned with whether Theodore's mission had been accomplished than his well-being. Ezra dear, no need to fret. Sir Crane is a master of his craft. Nothing could go wrong, she commented in her usual calm manner. While Ezra acknowledged her words, the earlier events were nothing short of unnerving. What if Theodore met an untimely end on their watch? It would complicate matters significantly. This possibility weighed heavily on Ezra's mind. What kind of trouble could there be? He's just an occultist. With the power of the Welsh and Swanson families, we can easily secure others if needed. Eleanor dismissed Ezra's concerns. In South City, these two prestigious households held unmatched influence. But he was quick to refute, Eleanor, things may not be as simple as you think. Just as he began explaining the complexity of the situation, Theodore coughed twice on the hospital bed. Slowly, he opened his eyes. Sir Crane, you're finally awake. Ezra's face lit up with hope as he rushed to Theodore's side. How are you feeling? Do you remember what happened earlier? He hurriedly asked. Theodore was still groggy. Where am I? How did I end up here? Sir Crane, don't you remember? You were bleeding and collapsed earlier, Ezra asked, his confusion deepening. Bleeding? Collapsed? Theodore furrowed his brow. He tried to recollect the recent events. As he dug deeper into his memory, his expression shifted from bewilderment to fear. Oh my God! Theodore suddenly exclaimed. He flung the blanket aside and jumped out of bed. Hastily fleeing the room, he stumbled as he went. His frantic behavior made it appear as if he'd seen a ghost. They were astonished by his reaction. What's going on? Ezra stood frozen, watching Theodore's bizarre escape. Why are you running, Sir Crane? Should I stay and face doom? Theodore yelled back, his eyes wide with terror. Ezra, you have no idea what you've brought upon us. You don't know who we've just crossed. A being of overwhelming power, capable of snuffing us out with a finger. What? Ezra was dumbfounded, his expression one of sheer disbelief. Sir Crane, this can't be real. Look at me, Ezra. Do I seem like I'm joking? Theodore's voice trembled with fear. Memories began to flood back, reminding him of the intense backlash he'd suffered earlier. The incident was unlike anything he'd ever experienced. Usually, a mere backfire might leave you dizzy and disoriented. At worst, You'd feel a little under the weather for a few days. But the sheer force of the backfire Theodore had just experienced was enough to cost him his life. That could only mean one thing: the person he had crossed paths with was not to be trifled with. If they came knocking for revenge, there would be nowhere to hide. Sir Crane, did you maybe take a knock to the head just now? What else could explain these nonsensical words of yours? Eleanor chimed in, her voice dripping with skepticism. Dustin is just a doctor. What could he possibly do to reduce you to this quivering mess? You look like you've seen a ghost, for goodness sake. Is it really that terrible? Yeah, Sir Crane, Ezra added, puzzled. He'd done a bit of digging into Dustin's background. Dustin was nothing more than a rustic, real small-town guy. He had some fighting skills, some medical know-how, and a few tricks up his sleeve. Even so, those couldn't justify this level of terror. You both are hopelessly naive, Theodore retorted, exasperation oozing from every word. The one who just made me spew blood is no run-of-the-mill person. Their power dwarfs your wildest imagination, he exclaimed. Then, he added, if I were you, I'd quit while I'm ahead and extend a formal apology to this man. Because if they decide to unleash their fury, you'll regret it before you can blink. Theodore was a member of the Mystic Arts Order. Hence, he knew precisely what that kind of intense backfire implied. When he claimed this person to be at least a master in the occult, he wasn't blowing smoke. He might be even more powerful. Sir Crane, let's not indulge in baseless speculations, Ezra cautioned. Dustin is nothing more than an ordinary man, I assure you. There's no reason for you to be so scared, Eleanor stated coldly. She crossed her arms and eyed Theodore skeptically. She had doubts about him ever since the incident at the Welsh family. Theodore had previously made an error that cost him an ear, as well as her grandfather's life. Still, Eleanor maintained a polite demeanor toward Theodore. It was primarily out of respect for Ezra. However, this recent failure by Theodore completely shattered her trust and patience. In her eyes, he was nothing more than a sham who dabbled in the supernatural to deceive people. How can you doubt me? Theodore fumed with anger. He had risked his life to offer his insights, only to be met with skepticism. Eleanor, in his view, had no understanding of the gravity of the situation. Sir Crane, let's take it down a notch, Ezra tried to mediate. Maybe there's a misunderstanding here. He continued, I have complete faith that Dustin doesn't have that level of power. Could there be a chance you made a misstep that led to your injuries? Impossible. Theodore scoffed. My methods are flawless, tried and true. I've never made a mistake before. This time, I've genuinely met someone of superior caliber. Flawless, you say? That's rich, Eleanor snorted, her expression glacial. In the span of a few days, you've already messed up twice. It's ridiculous that you claim you can't make any mistakes. From what I can see, you're simply inadequate. You've crossed the line now. Theodore was about to blow his top. However, his emotions backfired against him. Suddenly, he coughed up a mouthful of blood, almost toppling over. Sir Crane, maybe you should get some rest, Ezra suggested, reaching out to help. But Theodore swatted him away and said coldly, I've told you all I can. If you don't believe me, it's your funeral. With that, Theodore stumbled out of the ward without looking back. He had warned them. If they chose not to listen, they'd have to face the consequences. What a fraud, calling himself a master. Eleanor rolled her eyes, her disdain on full display. Eleanor, there's something strange about this. We should look into it, Ezra proposed. What's there to investigate? He's just a country bumpkin. He can't possibly make a big fuss, Eleanor replied nonchalantly. Then, she added, if you're not up to the task, I'll find someone else. You don't have to bother. You say that, but serving you and looking out for my dearest is my honor, Ezra said, playfully embracing her. Rest assured, I'll spare no expense to bring in an expert. Dustin will pay the price, he affirmed. That's more like it, Eleanor grinned. Any man who dared spurn her was in for a world of trouble.